Hello, YouTube. The next citations from the Old Testament aren't really prophecies, but I think they're interesting enough that they deserve mention. There are parallel passages in Matthew 4, 1 through 11, and Luke 4, 1 through 13 regarding Jesus being tempted by Satan. I'm going to read from the passage in Matthew. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their splendor. And he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. So the first citation was in verse 4, and that comes from Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. And this is cited correctly. I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. This entire commandment that I command you today you must diligently observe, so that you may live in increase, and go in and occupy the land that the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. Remember the long way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, in order to humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commandments. He humbled you by letting you hunger, then by feeding you with manna, with which neither you nor your ancestors were acquainted, in order to make you understand that one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Now, it's interesting that when Satan is quoting his scriptures here, he makes an interesting redaction and also what appears to be a misinterpretation. He's quoting from Psalm 91, verses 11 through 12. I'm going to read verses 9 through 13 for a little bit of context. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, no scourge come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that they will not dash your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. So the part that Satan redacted from verse 11 was to guard you in all your ways. Left that out because it probably wouldn't apply to Jesus, because Jesus being God, would he need to do that? Also, regarding dashing your foot against a stone, that's pretty obvious figurative language, while Satan took it literally. Now, I find it a little interesting that Satan has access to a Bible in the first place, but that's neither here nor there. Another interesting point regarding the third temptation by Satan, listed in Matthew, it says that it took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world. It would only be possible to see all of the kingdoms of the world from a single point if the world was flat. Now, Luke makes an interesting change to that, where it says that Satan brought him up and in an instant showed him all the kingdoms of the world. So it's more of a vision than being guided to a physical place, where you're seeing all of the kingdoms of the world in your line of sight. And the other two citations Jesus gives regarding putting the Lord your God to the test and worshiping God alone, they come from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 8, verses 13 and 16. I'll read those. The Lord your God you shall fear, him you shall serve, and by his name alone you shall swear. Do not put the Lord your God to the test as you tested him at Massah. You must diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God and his decrees and his statutes that he has commanded you. So those are pretty straightforward. But what I found interesting about a few verses earlier in Deuteronomy chapter 6, I'm going to read verses 4 through 6 and see if they seem familiar. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Keep these words that I am commanding you today in your heart. So this is the origin of what Jesus was speaking about regarding the commandments in the law, which were the greatest, in Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40. Now he's asked, Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment, and a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Now, the other commandment that he's referring to is in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. I'll read 17 and 18. You shall not hate in your heart any one of your kin. You shall reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt yourself. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. So, there have been a lot of times in speaking with other believers regarding the new covenant and the doing away of the old law, and that Jesus gave us these two commandments, and those were the only ones that we really needed to follow. Treating those as a new creation that Jesus came up with. That it was a bit of an innovation at the time, where with these passages it's pretty clear that it's not innovations. Anyway, I thought these were some interesting points, and I'll get to the prophecy next.